Woohoo! Look at that, Johnny. And welcome to the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast, where we talk about trucking, risk, and insurance.
All the good stuff related to wheels that go round and round and round.
Yeah, and John Farquhar and I are your hosts, and this week, John's got a few things that he wanted to talk to you about, so we didn't invite a guest. So it's just the two of us.
Yeah.
Johnny!
Just the two of us. Hey, how you doing, Chris?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. Is that any better? I'd be just living the dream, and I'd have to quit work and, just become retired full time.
Okay, well, I mean, maybe if it was any better, there'd be two of you, but, And
well, I had to stop saying that because my wife was tripping over the other one of me all the time while she was going to do the laundry. I was getting in the way.
Well, she probably liked the other one much better anyways.
Yeah, that's debatable.
Hey, give us a recap. I think you've got 3, maybe 4 things that you wanted to talk about today. What are our viewers are we going to ramble on about?
Well, I think one of the ones that we want to ramble on about is some of the latest additions to the ELD list on Transport Canada.
Yep.
2 big players have recently been approved. So I think that would be something we'd love to touch on a little bit. And as well, U.S. has just announced that they are going to open the border up next month. Yay! It's great, but I'm still not sure we want to travel that much yet. So, but nonetheless, there's some caveats with it, and I think it's something worth touching on that we need to bring to the listeners and let everybody know what's coming down the pipe.
And by caveats, you mean especially for truck drivers, our audience.
Yes, there is a piece in there that could be a deal breaker for some people.
So truck drivers should listen up.
Big time. Safety managers, anybody hiring, recruiting, because this will be something you're going to want to look for.
Yep. And lastly, what was it?
Old man brain.
Yeah, well, it's 2 old guys with gray beards. So, what can our listeners expect?
Well, we're definitely looking to recruit more folks to come on and talk. We've got a couple of people lined up to get some recordings done and whatnot. So that's in the very near future. That's going to be good. And some really key, fun people as well. So, if there's other folks out there that are interested, hey, chime in and reach out to either one of us and say, hey, I got a topic I'd like to talk about. And we can get on and banter.
And that would be fun. Yeah, we've got... I know you've got Lisa coming on. You've got Mike coming on. Mm-hmm. I saw you reached out to another Mike.
Yep.
So we've got a couple of Mikes and a Lisa.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah. So let's get on with the first. What are you going to tackle first?
Let's tackle the ELDs because that's so much fun. Like everybody loves the electronic logging devices, and it's all so new and important. And it's got so many different names, which I don't know that we can repeat some of them on this show. But nonetheless, let's talk about what's going on in the ELD world right now.
All right. I'm going to bring up a page. Do you want Truck News to flash up, or do you want Transport Canada?
Let's go Truck News first. Let's because this is a big announcement for these guys, and they're Canadian, which is awesome. So recently announced has passed their certification. They are now one of the big players on Transport Canada's website.
Yay! And hold on, let me find. We got to get my sound effects in here. Yay! And I better throw some confetti for them.
Oh, yes. Yeah, very worth it. There's no doubt about it. But yeah, Isaac's been a big name in the industry here for quite some time. They've been around for many, many years. And interesting enough, as the article notes here, They equip 40% of Canada's large carriers with ELDs already. So they're providing those carriers that are going stateside. So this is a huge thumbs up to the folks at Isaac to be approved for the Canadian side. And I know it's one that you and I, Chris, we both like what Isaac brings to the table. I'm not going to say it's for everybody because it's not. But nonetheless, it's a damn good device, and it does lots of things. It's not just ELD. Isaac has got driver scorecard, driver coaching, telematics data, all built into it, and it's a really well-rounded program.
Yeah, I like to think of it as a premium device because it brings an awful lot of features.
Yes, very much so.
And
very
as you said, it may not be for everybody because along with the premium features, there's a cost associated to that.
Exactly. Now, with that said, you can also get Isaac in an a la carte approach.
Okay.
So you can just get pieces of it. You don't have to buy the whole thing. You can just get pieces of it. But, again, it's still a premier device, regardless of what pieces you get or the whole package.
And one of the features that I really like on the Isaac system, at least I'm told, that because it's built around an Android interface, you can virtually add almost any Android app to the program. So for one, you could add the online training portion and put it right on there. As one carrier said, though, you may not want to pay the streaming costs, especially if you're Canadian in the U.S., but it is doable, which is really cool because, of course, I know you, at least I'm a big proponent of online training. You can't meet everybody in person. And with COVID right now, it is probably the best way to do training. And if you can have it right in the truck, right on the one device, I think that's pretty cool.
Exactly.
Hey, a question for Isaac. If Isaac is happens to catch this episode, answer me this, Batman. Riddle me this, Batman. As that shows my age. Can we lock out? So, for instance, if I put an online training device, training portal on my Isaac ELD, can I lock it up so that it can only be viewed while on Wi-Fi? Because a lot of truck stops have Wi-Fi.
Yes. Right? Very good question.
That would be kind of cool if you could restrict it. I don't know that you can, but that would be neat. So, anyways,
that would be a good idea. Yeah.
There, Isaac gave you a good idea, maybe. That might be the only good idea out of this whole podcast today. But,
hey, any idea is a good idea.
Well, we got to throw that mud against the wall and see what sticks.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So along with Isaac was another big player who's in the ELD and telematics data field who also got certified this week. So two big players there, which is pretty good. So we've got Trimble Transportation, which most people know as PeopleNet.
Yeah, PeopleNet. Yay! Let's give them a little throw the confetti, yay for PeopleNet.
Yep. So that's great news, to see some of the big players that we've been wondering about. But obviously, based on the article from Truck News about Isaac, it was a very lengthy process that they needed to go through. So, and these guys have got some very extensive programs that they're utilizing. So that now brings our list to 6 approved providers.
Whoa, 6, and it's only been law since June the 12th.
Only.
And, just to remind the viewers, when I make that sarcastic remark, I don't believe it's the telematics providers that I'm throwing the darts at.
No.
They all had their devices in. I've talked to several of them. They had their devices in a long, long time ago. Yeah. But it was, let's say, issues. Came up, and it was a very slow process from the time the government and God, Mike Millian from PMTC, said when they first released the standard, finally released Transport Canada, he said there's no way this gives the ELD providers and the what do you call the people, the FPIs of the world,
the testers of the world,
right?
Certifiers,
enough time to make sure their device will pass and then submit it. And of course, Mike was right, because here we are many months past the deadline. However, John, what's happening with enforcement? Just while we're talking about that, our American listeners and our Canadian listeners might want to know, since it did become law June the 12th, that you have to have a Canadian approved ELD device in your truck as of June the 12th, 2021. Can I get a ticket?
There were, at that time, there were how many approved devices?
I think it was a big donut. Oh, I like donuts.
Exactly. Yes. Donuts are good still, but the enforcement was basically educational enforcement. There were no fines or violations being laid or issued at that time. Now, there has been talk about some jurisdictions enacting that or putting enforcement in place come the new year. Not sure that's going to be well when you still only got 6 providers. We'll see what comes out in the next couple of months, but still it's a short list of providers, and there are a lot of devices out there that carriers are currently using and hoping their device gets certified.
I know there's some pressure. Ontario, what's Quebec doing? Sorry, I know Ontario has said they won't write a ticket until June of 22.
I believe Quebec is the same way.
I think so. So, where the majority of the population of Canada is, and the majority of, therefore, I'm going to say deliveries, if it's an American truck coming into Canada, you are highly unlikely to get a ticket for not having a certified ELD device until June of 22. And I believe there is pressure on those other provinces, some of the provinces that have said January the 1st. I believe there's pressure on them to relax and let's make it all June of 22. So well, stay tuned. It's a good reason to tune into the podcast, and we'll keep you up to date.
Exactly. Now, with all this said, I think it's important to let the motor carriers know this is still no time to be sitting back waiting to implement your ELD device. Get on it. If you're a Canadian carrier, Canadian-only carrier, you need to get working on this. You need to have something in place because, we know that there's short supply of everything in the world right now. So ELD devices are going to be no different. So you need to get on that list. And any carrier, U.S. carrier that's coming to Canada on a regular basis, you need to pay attention to this approved list and make sure that your device, be talking to your provider, and make sure they're going to get on this list.
Yeah, and we know that this applies to federally regulated companies only. Yes. However, at least Ontario has also stated that I think the law has had 2 readings, if I'm not mistaken, and the legislature is now reconvened. As soon as they can do the 3rd reading, they will announce the date that Ontario-only carriers who are required to have currently a paper log will have to move to an ELD device as well. And Ontario has clearly stated that they are using the federal rules, I guess you'd call it. And so any federal device that's been approved, that will be the Ontario list as well. So making it kind of easy, but Ontario-only carriers as well will need to abide by this. I believe sometime in 22.
Yes, that's what was indicated. So no firm date, but it was indicated in 2022.
Yeah, I kind of heard June, but
I heard the same thing.
But we've got to wait for the legislation to pass before we actually.
Correct.
So, anyways, my point is, if you're an Ontario-only carrier, get investigating this because, as John already said, I believe devices are going to be in short supply as well. And you've been given fair warning.
Yep.
So
exactly. So,
although
interesting enough, there's another jurisdiction in Canada.
well, there's
that
like
is said-
nine other provinces and 3 territories, right, in Canada.
Right.
Okay,
But
just
one
checking
of them, yeah, exactly. You're good. One of those has actually publicly stated, the Ministry of Transportation of that province has publicly stated they're not moving to an electronic device. They're going to continue to use paper.
Oh, interesting.
And interesting enough, the Trucking Association of that province is pushing back and saying, no. You need to move to electronic. We need to follow the rest of Canada and get on board.
And are you going to reveal and I honestly hadn't heard that yet, but I'm willing to make a guess that
it is a word that's about this long.
Oh,
and
long.
It starts with an S.
I was going to say it started with an A, but
nope, it's the S one. Saskatchewan.
And that's that surprises me, but interesting stance.
Yeah.
So I'm glad the trucking is.
It's not firm because there's a lot of pushback from the industry to the province. So I'm hoping they're going to sway their way and get them going in the right direction.
Well, not to bring up a negative subject like Humboldt, but here I go. I'm bringing up Humboldt. And without talking about Mr. Sidhu, when they did the investigation of Humboldt, they did find, I believe, if I remember, more than 70 logbook violations at the time. And one point that I do remember pretty clearly, they said had Mr. Sidhu been inspected prior to the accident, the day of the accident, he likely would have been put out of service for logbook violations. So not that I want to tie that disaster, 16 people died, 13 were injured, and hundreds or thousands of lives were changed due to that. However, an electronic logbook in that device would have been useful at that time, even for that motor carrier that I think was questionable in their actions. You know what I mean? Like, it would have hung the motor carrier even more because that motor carrier only paid $5,000 in fines, which was just ridiculous.
Despicable. Yeah. Well, and we know how hard it is to understand the hours of service rules. That's a challenge on its own. And then having to record it on a paper document, mind-blowing for any new driver coming into the industry that didn't grow up in this with their family. So the ELD really, really simplifies and helps the driver understand what they can and cannot do. There's less violations being acquired through an ELD versus a driver. And I'm not even picking on the guys that are blatantly doing it on purpose to cheat. I'm just talking about the guys that aren't quite sure how to understand the rules. They didn't receive enough training, hence like Mr. Sidhu. The lack of training that young man got and then ended up in that disastrous situation. What a shame. What a shame.
Yeah, I really believe that is a black mark on the trucking industry, much more than Mr. Sidhu's black mark, although he has to live with it. And so do we. I'm trying. I bring this up frequently because I'm trying to make people remember the disaster so that we can take some positive action from it, I'm hoping. And I'm disappointed to hear Saskatchewan doesn't want to implement ELDs because I think it was a contributing factor in the Humboldt crash. Not the main factor, but it contributed. So, or possibly did at least.
And the shameful aspect is Mr. Sidhu is spending 8 years in prison for what happened. And we are now, I believe, 3 years since that incident?
Yeah, he's due to get out very soon now. Because in Canada, you never spend 100% of your sentence.
Yeah. So, but the unfortunate aspect is in that 3 years' time, the industry really hasn't moved forward to really correct this situation or this behavior.
Well, I can hear some of the provinces yelling and screaming at that statement. So, I mean, Ontario had the minimum entry-level training program in place before that crash. I believe 3 others, maybe more, but I think 3 others. I think it's a total of 4 provinces now have some sort of minimum entry-level training, all very similar to what Ontario had in the beginning. 1 or 2 more are looking at it, but God, it's been how many years now? We've had the trial. Mr. Sadu's about to get out of jail, and the trucking industry across Canada hasn't changed. Mr. Garneau was the federal transport minister prior to the election. Of course, I don't know who it is right now because I don't think that person's been appointed yet. But get off your arse and do some pushing on the provinces that haven't made the changes yet. Federal government, please. Sorry.
Well, and the industry themselves, even regardless of the government side, the industry themselves needs to stand up and take a stand, because the wording in what you said, minimum entry-level training, that's the sad part. It's minimum. The carriers have got to step up and do more. They've got to realize that, yes, I'm getting a guy out of school. He's got minimum training to get his license, but that doesn't mean he's really qualified to operate this piece of equipment. Yes. We need proper training. We need proper trainers and whatnot. So companies need to invest in their programs to tackle this situation.
Yeah, we've got to improve, the whole thing. And this brings up a whole list of other stuff like, why aren't we a Red Seal? Why don't we have a real apprenticeship program? Again, in Ontario, they've got, I think we still have the voluntary apprenticeship program. I don't know any carrier that's using it. And nobody else in Canada has it. Why is it not an apprentice program? Why is it not a Red Seal program?
Exactly.
Anyways, John, let's we could go on that topic. But just to go back, please, federal government, let's put some pressure, because it seems like my much beloved industry will not act in a positive way unless we are pushed. So please push more, harder. Sorry, I think I was yelling. Sorry, John.
No problem. Sounded good to me.
All right. Well, what is next on the list?
Well, let's talk about the news about the U.S. opening up the border here.
Oh yes, let's go over here. Let me pull this article up for you. There we go.
So I don't believe we have a date yet. They are saying early November, but they haven't set a firm date as to when.
Let's be honest. It's going to be before the U.S. Thanksgiving, because they want us Canadians to go there for Black Friday.
That's right. Exactly.
So
anyway,
here's just let me say, I'm going to put the links to all these things in the show notes down below. So go ahead, Johnny. Sorry.
So I was going to say, Homeland Security has announced that they're finally going to open up. They're going to open it up to non-essential travelers who are vaccinated. So you will have to provide proof of vaccination when you cross the border. They'll ask for it. You have to provide proof of it. If you're not, then you're not getting across the border. So now the interesting aspect here is they've added a caveat, as I said earlier, is that they are looking at essential travelers who have been allowed to travel freely across the border without vaccination requirements. But they're now putting in the stipulations that say those essential travelers will have to be vaccinated by January 2022. So those essential people, as we know, are truck drivers, a very large group of people crossing the border on a daily basis. You guys are going to have to be, guys and gals are going to have to be vaccinated and show proof of vaccination.
Yeah, and right here it says, as you already mentioned, in early January, the United States will require essential visitors like truck drivers or healthcare workers to be vaccinated to cross the land borders. Holy crap! The 4-letter words are forming in my brain. I just don't want to say that.
Yeah. So, it's curious to know. I know when the pandemic was in its height and the vaccinations were starting, there was lots of support on both sides of the borders to get drivers vaccinated.
Yeah.
Drive up, pull in, get vaccinated, get your shot and whatnot. Then if you can get home, get your other shot or get the other one on the road again. So I don't know that we really know how many drivers are actually vaccinated versus unvaccinated.
Well,
and
you bring up an interesting point. I know that there's many Canadian truck drivers got vaccinated in the U.S. Because of they made it easy for truck drivers at the truck stops. They had vaccine clinics. Ontario, where we're both reside, is about to roll out their app, their digital vaccine passport thing. I wonder how what steps does a truck driver have to go through to get that into the Ministry of Health, or whatever we call it here in Ontario, so that it shows up on his vaccine passport?
Well, interesting enough, I was reading an article last night that said there was supposed to be a federal passport in place.
Well, yes, but the feds need, because they don't have health information, it's all provincial. I read an article that they already have agreements with 4 of the provinces, and they're going to be using their digital passport app. And
good.
The article I read said it had to meet these criteria, but the 3 or 4 provinces who already have a passport out, this will work in the federal one. And Ontario, apparently, the feds believe that they are using the same or very similar program, so they anticipate the Ontario app will also work in the federal app. But there are several provinces that have said they are not bringing out a passport.
Right. Yeah, and the federal app is yet to be rolled out.
Right. And they said that's coming when? January?
Something like that. Yeah, they were talking the new year. So, So, but they were supposed to have it out long before now, is what the article had mentioned that I read. So they were way behind and went to delay. So obviously it makes sense with the conversations with the different provinces.
I was going to make a political statement about whether the election was needed or not, but an election got in the way because, quite truthfully, that was proposed by the federal government. Trudeau went basically. That was one of the platforms for his election, is that he wanted to do this, and he wanted to make healthcare workers or federal workers get a pass or a vaccination, and he got reelected. So I'm guessing then that gives the federal government permission to move ahead on those things that he basically ran on his election for. And I'm trying not to give away who I voted for, because it's quite controversial as to,
we don't talk about politics and religion on this channel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that I'm always happy to have an election, only because I get to vote. Whether it goes my way or not. And
get to have your say.
And here in Ontario, it's already started the next election campaign.
I know.
Oh, man, we got 8 months of it now.
Yeah.
But anyways.
So one of the concerns with this new announcement of drivers having to be vaccinated by early January, and again, have to be vaccinated by then to get into the U.S. So you need to be doing it now if you're getting vaccinated. So if you're not, well, then you're not going to be crossing the border. So you could end up being Ontario only or Canadian driver only or whatever. But this makes a big challenge for safety managers and recruiters, HR staff, because now as you're hiring drivers, this adds another component that you need to interview for to make sure, because you don't want to be putting a driver in a situation where he gets shut down at the border because he's not vaccinated. And now you got to figure out how to get that truck moving again.
Well, that, and how about the existing drivers in your fleet? If you're a safety guy, you are now going to have to start surveying your drivers, just like the nurses. I've got a nurse that lives in my house, so I'm kind of, the hospital has asked all the nurses, Are you vaccinated, unvaccinated, or do you decline to reveal your status or something? There's a third choice.
Okay.
Well, because
and her or them.
Well, it's just the third choice is you choose for privacy reasons not to reveal your status. And what a quagmire. But as soon as the U.S. makes this mandatory, the existing trucking companies are going to have to ask their existing driver force if they cross border, what's your status?
Exactly.
And if there wasn't already a truck driver shortage, which I argue that there isn't yet, although I really believe we are truly on the verge of having a truck driver shortage. Well, look what we're going to do to the cross-border, because I got to believe at least 10% of the cross-border drivers, if it's part of the normal population, are not vaccinated. And it could be higher, because we all know long-haul truck drivers like to be independent and are free thinkers. It's going to be an interesting stat to see how many of our cross-border drivers are totally vaccinated.
Well, we're already hearing about issues, particularly, I think, in the U.S. more so than here in Canada. But we're hearing about shippers and receivers that are asking motor carriers, are your drivers vaccinated? You're coming to my facility. I want to know that they're vaccinated. If they're not vaccinated, I don't want them on the property. But the sad part is they're creating a double standard because they haven't implemented a program internally with their own staff, their warehouse staff, which is kind of funny as heck, but nonetheless. I read recently that President Biden has implemented or trying to implement a program that says if you have 100 or more employees, you need to have them vaccinated. You need to have policies in place.
Just like the federal government has said that federally regulated employees must be vaccinated. Is a trucking company that goes outside of their domicile, and in other words, not intra, but interstate or interprovincial, is that a federally regulated employee?
Well, we know they're federally regulated because they're crossing international boundaries and provincial boundaries. So, but do they fall under the mandate of federal workers? Yeah, this is a bit of a gray area. We need some clarity here.
We do. John, it's already, I can't believe this. We're at over 30 minutes already. Did we cover those three topics that you wanted to hit?
I think we hit on what we wanted to. I think we got a good, and it'll be interesting to watch the news as it transpires, and we'll keep everybody updated on what we see and, throw our opinions out there like we have been.
Yeah, and so to our listeners and watchers, thank you very much. If you are getting value from the Trucking Risk and Insurance podcast, get the new name right, Chris. Click like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Topics. What would you like John or Chris to address? And guests.
Speakers?
Yes, we are looking for guests. So please leave us a comment.
If you don't like our program, I invite you to hit the dislike button twice.
Yay! Thanks, Johnny. We'll be on the air again next week. Every
Looking
Friday,
forward to it.
Or most Fridays, we release a new podcast, so stay tuned. That's it for this week. Trucking Risk and Insurance podcast is out of here. Well, should I give applause for that? We ended.